Hello and welcome to Cybersecurity Unmasked, a podcast by InfoSystems where we help organizations become educated on cybersecurity. We help individuals become educated on cybersecurity, and we try to help everybody win the battle against the bad guys that are out there that are trying to steal our data and cause havoc out in the real world. My name is Keith Hales. I'm the CEO here at InfoSystems. And joining us today for the second podcast in a row is Chris Bevil. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Keith. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So Chris is our CISO, which is Chief Information Security Officer, but we're going to talk about both security and compliance today. So this is going to be a fun topic. I'm really excited. And the last podcast, Chris, we talked about the differences and the similarities between cybersecurity and compliance, but we introduced this concept of a cyber resilience analysis. So let's back up. Where did that term even come from? What in the world is a cyber resilience analysis?
Well, that's really a good question, and really it came from a lot of research. And what we found when we looked at Gartner research, when we looked at other research out in the world, is the word cyber resilience came up, and it just continues to come up over and over again. And when you thought about it, when you look up the definition of what does that mean, it really means that it's an ability of an organization to recover very quickly after some type of event is to occur. And so, as an organization, as a CISO, or whether you're a director of IT security, whatever it may be, you're trying to think, okay, if I have an incident, how fast can I get back to where I need to be? How fast can I get my organization running the way they should? And so when we were thinking about it, we were like, okay, so if that's where an organization's trying to go, we have this cyber resilience analysis that we've put together. So, or I should say analysis, we were like, why don't we say it's a cyber resilience analysis? So where are you today? What are the things you need to do? And how is that going to help you get to being cyber resilient and getting back up to speed very quickly?
So the key word, which everybody understands, the key word resilient, right? That just means that, hey, when you get attacked, when you get knocked down in something, you're able to weather the storm and you're able to bounce back. So basically, this is helping an organization determine how well they can weather those cyber attacks and how quickly they can bounce back. Because that sounds like a simplified way to communicate it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you think about, okay, I'm trying to say, okay, how cyber secure am I, which we talked about in the previous podcast, which is, how are my tools doing to protect from any kind of issues? And then we talked about compliance. What are the policies and procedures and things that I need to do to hold people accountable and training? When you put those two together and they're all working together in one unified function, then you get to that cyber resilience component and you really achieve that goal.
Okay. So something that you said that I think is very important for our listeners is to say there's going to be cybersecurity, which hopefully prevents attacks, right? So hopefully keeps people from getting in the door, keep the bad guys from getting in your network or getting your data, whatever their goal is, right? But there's also the what do you do after the fact, right? So I think you and I would love to say, hey, if you implement all these things, if a customer follows all these best practices and best recommendations, that they're never going to get attacked and bad guys are never going to get in and their data is never going to be taken. However, you and I both know that that's not reality because people make mistakes and bad guys do get in. So the goal is to have a plan to keep the bad guys out, but then also have a plan to what an organization should do next.
Correct.
Whenever the bad guys do get in, because unfortunately, I hate to admit it, it happens a lot, and you and I know that. A lot of the times we can't talk about it when we work with our customers on it for obviously privacy reasons and confidentiality reasons, but it happens.
I'm just really glad that we're doing a podcast and that this is in a recording so that everybody has heard the CEO talking to the CISO about that he understands that these things can happen.
Well, no, it's not going to happen to us, obviously, but everybody else are going to happen.
But unfortunately, you're right. It really can happen, and that's how are you going to bounce back? But it's all really, it's one big continuous thing from the start to the finish. When we talk about how are you going to bounce back, think about the Colonial Chemical Pipeline attack as a whole. One of the challenges there was they had somewhat tested their organization, but they didn't know how quickly they could bounce back. So instead of
Colonial Pipeline, you said Colonial Chemical.
Oh yeah, sorry, the Colonial Pipeline. Yeah. Sorry, but if they had been able to test that and known how fast and told the CEO how fast they could get back up and running, right. the CEO would not have been as concerned about, well, I'm just going to go to pay the ransom. We got to get up faster. And in reality, what happened was when he paid the ransom and he got the ransom key, all of a sudden now they were going much slower. Yeah. And it created a kind of a continual issue. That's why we built the cyber resilience analysis, because what we want to do is help organizations understand first, where are you and what do you need to do? What's your roadmap? And then two, what are the things in play after you have that roadmap that you're going to do first, second, third, fourth to really help an organization achieve their goals?
So it's putting together a plan, basically.
It's a roadmap to security and compliance.
So specifically with our CRA offering, our cyber resilience analysis offering, so how does that work? So how do we help a customer go from these things they know they need to do to actually moving towards putting together that plan?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's I think if you think about the overall cyber resilience analysis, it's pretty unique. We use a tool called Cynomi.
Okay.
The tool, and what we like about it is it does a couple of things. It allows us to come into an organization that's trying to figure out where they are and where they want to go and help them identify their cybersecurity posture. A score of 0 to 10. Where do you fall out on that? Are you a 3.2 or are you an 8.7? And once they kind of have that general idea, they actually have the ability to do a vulnerability scan as well. And then we go through a series of questions and answers to help an organization answer the questions. This can be around different frameworks, like we talked about in the previous podcast, whether it was HIPAA or NIST or ISO 27001 or GDPR. We go through it. We help them identify their challenges. From there, we give them a roadmap, and that roadmap then tells them where they need to go based on those frameworks and their answers, not just something that we provided to them.
Yeah, you mentioned a score, like a 1 through 10 score. So the scores are actually based upon how well they compare against the frameworks.
Correct.
Right. So these are frameworks that are put out by industry experts, and by different industries, really, and compliance groups. And so these are not InfoSystems ratings. This is what a third party is saying that an organization needs to do in order to meet that specific compliance standard.
Right. And that's what makes this so unique, is so many organizations out there today, they go in and do these assessments and they say, hey, we're going to help you see where you are. We're going to give you a roadmap. And they do it on a spreadsheet. And unfortunately, they have good integrity. They have great ethics. They do these things. But the customer is going to look back at them and go, you can make that spreadsheet say whatever you want, and then so that you can try to sell me something. We're not doing that. This, the Cynomi tool allows us the opportunity to actually go through the Q&A with them, help them identify what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. And then when we provide that roadmap back, we're able to take the findings from the Cynomi tool and we put it in an order that says, hey, here's the critical, here's the mediums. Let's talk about the things that you need to do to achieve your goals and objectives. If you need assistance, InfoSystems and InfoSystems Cyber is here to help you, whether it's from our value-added reseller side, our MSP side, or even our cyber side. We can bring it all together and give you a holistic view and also a holistic capability that most companies can't.
So the tool, I know we're going to talk about the tool hopefully more later in the next podcast, but the tool itself, it's really just helping an organization organize their thoughts and put all this stuff together. I mean, what else is it doing? What else is it providing those customers?
That's actually really what it's doing. It will provide, it does provide policies too. So if an organization they don't have policies, that can be a very expensive endeavor. And in this particular case, it will provide them policies that they can utilize. And policies are great. Don't get me wrong. Policies are wonderful, but it's the procedures and the standards that go with those policies that you need to make sure you work with.
So some of the outputs are more than just here are the next 5 steps. Some of the outputs might even be documentation they could leverage potentially in order to meet those steps.
Absolutely. And it's really a good holistic tool across the board that we've been lucky enough to utilize. And it allows us to use our minds, use our consulting ability to help an organization determine what they need because of our history and knowledge of what we've learned in the past.
So if an organization were to go through this process and they were to take the recommendations coming out of the tools and out of the whole engagement with us, then they would become more compliant with whatever framework they were shooting for. But they would also become more secure, because I understand the tool has just basic security best practices and hygiene baked into it with some of the frameworks. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. I mean, we have 2 customers that are publicly traded organizations. One utilized the CRA, started working on the tool, because one other cool thing is we give them a subscription to the tool for a year. which is part of our offering. And so they're able to continue to update as they do things. And so we've watched them take their score, which was roughly around a 7, to they were really proud to show us, I believe it was an 8.9 to a 9.2, and you can only go to a 10. And they were really excited about it. Another customer that's in the transportation industry, probably one of the, I think the best things that we could have ever had shared with us about our CRA and the tool itself was, why have you guys been hiding this offering from me? You know, if I ever leave this organization, he goes, which I don't plan to, but if I ever do, the CRA and the Synomi tool will be the first thing that we utilize at whatever the next company I go to is. And that's a pretty powerful statement.
It's pretty high praise. I mean, that's pretty high praise for the leader, the IT leader, to say that. So I want to go back to something you said. So it sounds like this is a journey. What I mean by that is these folks who engaged us, they went through the process once, but then they're continuing down the process on their own. Sometimes we're engaged in that, sometimes we're not. Is that typical?
Yeah, it really depends on the organization. We offer two, we kind of have two services. We actually originally offered 3, which was where we just said, hey, here's the tool, we'll help you with your output, and we'll go from there. What we found is people got confused within the questions. So we offer a facilitated, which is one where we go through the Q&A with them. We help them find it. We give them the roadmap. And then once they take the roadmap, it's on them over the course of the year to go back into the tool and change all the different components. The one that I think that it's shockingly we're promoting more of and getting more buy-in from is the one that's facilitated with a quarterly. So what happens is we do the whole facilitated, we give them the roadmap. After we give them the roadmap, at the end of that, we say, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to commit to between now and the next 3 months to try to adhere to? And they will tell us, they will share that. And then that end of that 3 months, we come back, spend a couple of hours with them, say, hey, let's go back into the tool and all those things you committed to, let's put it in there and see how your score changed. It's a hold them accountable type scenario.
It's an accountability, but it's also that ongoing follow-up, because I know how easy it is to get distracted, right? So, but if you know somebody's coming back in 3 months to double check your work,
right?
I think it's going to help an organization hopefully become more secure and more compliant, because they're not doing it for us, right? They're doing it for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great offering. It's probably one of the best I've ever been associated with for a company, whether they're small business or even they can be publicly traded. If they want to know where they're going, you know, where are we supposed to get to? I mean, Zig Ziglar always talked about, you know, you could put you up against the best archer in the world and he could have you beat him as long as he blindfolded him and turned him around 10 times. And a lot of that he was talking about is, you know, the archer didn't know where he was shooting while you had a target. This is giving you that target to shoot at, and it gives an organization a target to shoot at. Then they know what they need to do. And they can also say, okay, are we spending too much money here in a particular tool? So there's a lot of benefits of cost savings as well.
Yeah, so cost savings, but then also focused effort, which is, I think, just a huge thing. Look, you and I both know this, and I think most of the listeners who are educated on this topic know this, that the cybersecurity and compliance worlds are fast moving right now. And so giving an organization the ability to focus in on key areas that are next is hopefully going to save them time, headache, but also money, right? So they're not spending, you and I both know of an organization that has bought multiple softwares that basically do the same thing, right? 2, 3, 4 times, and it's just unnecessary because they're really basically over-covering or over-protecting in one area, but then they've left the back door exposed in another area. Right?
Absolutely.
So this is going to help expose some of that, hopefully. So I'm excited because our next podcast, hopefully here in a few weeks, we'll be bringing in the CEO and one of the founders of Synomi. His name's David, who you and I both met, to actually talk specifically about the tool, specifically about the software, and maybe some of the outputs of some of the ways that customers have used it. So I'm excited. Anything to add, though, before we wrap up today?
No, I think it's an exciting time for organizations and for us to try to help organizations with the CRA. Look forward to talking to David. David's got a lot of good stories. Some he can tell us and some he can't, because he does come from a military background. And, you know, it's one of those, if he told us he'd have to kill us kind of thing. But looking forward to having that conversation with him.
Yeah, no, that's going to be great talking to David. So we hope everybody enjoyed the podcast today, learning hopefully a little more about the CRA and the cyber resilience analysis. Obviously, if you have specific questions, please reach out to us. If nothing else, this should give you an idea about what to do next if you find yourself in a spot where you know you need to make progress around either compliance or cybersecurity or both topics, this may give you an idea of where you go next. And if you need help with that, please let us know. So we hope you enjoyed the podcast and hope you can join us next time. Thanks a lot.